I'd like to welcome Karl and Jeff to the show. You may recognize them from episode 124, I believe, if I remember correctly. A couple of Louisiana Bigfoot Hunters. Back on the show to talk about an upcoming event. Guys, it's a convention season, conference season again. How's it going?
Going great, man. How you doing?
Doing all right. Man, good to talk to you guys again. It's been a while.
It has. It has
that.
Here, definitely. Got a lot of good things coming up and a couple of stories to talk about as well.
Awesome. So let's dial it back to last year. You guys were on here telling some stories, talking about some of the things you've experienced and about your upcoming, do you call it a conference or a convention? Festival. Okay. Even better. How did it go? How did it go last year? Did you have a good turnout?
Yeah, sure. I'll start off. Man, we had a great turnout. We were hoping to probably get 300 or 400 people. As you know, I had ordered 400 armbands, so I was hoping for at least 400. Then I said, I might as well get a few more. So I ordered, I think it was another 500, but there was a real cheap ones, nothing wrote on them and nothing like that, and I said, we'll never use it. We'll have for next year.
Yeah.
So it turned out, and, me and Jeff said, great, we can always use them. So super, we did. So we got started and we got going.
Knew.
Yeah, we only knew. The doors opened at 9 a.m. and people started coming in immediately. Our speaker started at 10. And at about 9:30, we had completely run out of the first 400 bands.
Wow.
Yeah, they were just pouring in. And so I'd walked into the speaker room to get everything ready in there. It's about 9:45 now. And the line was running all the way around the building, down the street, into the parking lot where people park waiting to get in.
Jeez.
So it was just blowing our mind, that we weren't expecting this. We were really surprised, glad to have it though. Very excited.
Very.
Yeah, it just turned out really well. The speakers was great. So we're hoping to do it again, bigger and better. And I'll let Jeff share a little bit of his experience. He was out on the floor more than I were. I was in the speaker room, but it was wild.
Look, I ordered around 300 T-shirts, hoping to sell out. Well, we sold out within 3 or 4 hours. We was gone. And then I ordered another 300 or 400 and mailed all of them out. And we still had people wanting shirts. Look, it had to be over. We estimated 2,300 people walked in there. It was unbelievable. We had people from Montana. We had people on the East Coast, the West Coast. Actually flew down here or drove down here just to go to our conference, to our festival in Montana.
That's awesome.
And it was great. Our speakers were great. Had a little difficulty in the on some of their presentation electrical malfunctions, but this year we hired a guy that's got a big screen. He handles all of our. We're going to go live, so you can go on our Facebook page, Natchitoches Louisiana Bigfoot Festival, and you can actually watch it live during Saturday. Yep. We threw in a meet and greet for Friday night at the event center. We got it catered. Of course, you get to meet all the 5 speakers and then get to mingle with each other. And we got Louisiana is a local restaurant's going to be providing the seafood, catfish, shrimp, that kind of stuff. It's $50 a ticket. Should be great. We've already sold a bunch of those, and our biggest issue, and mine was, and Karl's too, was getting people inside. It was just taking. Look, at I think it was 1:07 in the afternoon, our last guy, the line ended at 1:07 last year. That's how long it was.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of people don't think about. It takes a while to pack people into a building.
Right. Well, we're going to do like I got with Karl in the event center and the police department about putting just, when you go to the airport, you got to do the zigzag thing. You know what I mean? With those barriers. Right. So I think we're going to do that all the way out to the road so you'll get a lot more people at the door. We've got a prepay line, and we got a credit card and a cash line. We may even put a third one up if the traffic bottles up there. So if anybody's listening down here, we're going to really try to get you in fast. We've moved the T-shirts sales to another part of the building to not create a big traffic jam, so to speak. So should go smooth this year, but we're expecting 3,000 at least.
Do you guys happen to know off the top of your head the population of that community?
I do. The city of Natchitoches is like 17,000. When college, we're a college town, Northwestern State University, go Demons. You're looking at probably another 3,000 to 5,000 there. The parish we in, they call it Louisiana Parish, the counties. I think we're around 52,000 in the parish, but we're the largest parish in Louisiana. And we have the most dirt roads in the most country. So I guess that, and we're almost close to being center in Louisiana. So we're pulling from all sides and so it's all states. All states. We're like 50 miles from the East Texas, the border of Texas, and probably Jeff, 2.5 hours to Mississippi line, something like that.
Yeah, it's about 100 miles, 110 miles, give or take.
So it's a good location, and to jump back real quick, what Jeff's talking about on that meet and greet, that $50 for that meet and greet covers your meal ticket, the event that night, and but our regular ticket to get in the door is the same as it was last year. We kept that low, $10 for adults and $5 for children under 12. So people really like that. They can get in the door with a family of 4 for $30 and still have plenty of money to spend with the vendors. And speaking of vendors, we have 60 vendors this year.
60.
Yeah. Our main goal is for them to spend money with our vendors. That's our goal, is cheap at the front door, and they can spend their money inside with our guys, with our vendors. That's what we wanted. And that worked out pretty good last year.
I know that I've talked to a few people that attended last year's festival, and everybody loved it. Everybody had a good time that I spoke to. You guys are doing an awesome job at throwing this thing.
Well, we appreciate that, Matt. Last year, it was in April of last year we decided to do this, and so we had a little time to prepare. And little did we know how fast it comes for the next year. And we got more speakers, and we got speakers from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast. I'll let Jeff name the speakers off, and we're very excited about those. And a lot of you, these people that's listening will probably know who they are, and I'm sure you will, Matt. Jeff, you want to give the list away?
Yeah. We got Eli Watson with Small Town Monsters. Done a lot of production with Seth Breedlove and Courtney and them with Small Town Monsters. We got Todd Hess out of Arkansas. Another guy's been around, done a lot of books, a lot of movies, a lot of documentary stuff. We've got Amy Boo. Boo is with the Zoo Project and also attached to the Olympic Project out in Washington State. And we got our feature is Ron Moorhead. He's our feature guy. If you ever heard of Sierra Sounds, it's going to be incredible. It's going to be incredible.
And we also got Chester Moore that come on right at the last.
Yeah, Chester Moore
from Beaumont, Texas. So excited, very excited.
That is an amazing lineup. I'm a fan of everybody you mentioned. Chester was actually on the show not too long ago. He's been around.
Really?
Yeah, he's been around for probably longer than I have. And then, of course, you know, Todd is a staple in the community. He's spoken at so many conferences, been in so many documentaries. Ron Moorhead, absolute legend. Amy, I can't speak highly enough of her. She's an amazing person, does a tremendous amount for the Bigfoot world, and is very humble about it. And then Eli, yeah, Eli is someone that I want to have on this show. I just need to reach out to him. Hopefully he'll come on. I've been wanting to pick his ear for a while. He's an awesome guy.
You know, we had Shane Carson from the Olympic Project was going to come, but family issues. So he said, look, he called and said, dude, I got bad news. And I said, dude, I understand. It's no problem. So we'll probably get him next year. We're looking at Ronnie LeBlanc for next year. So if anybody's listening that would like to be a speaker at our event next year, please contact me or Karl, and we'll throw your name in the hat. And like Karl said, it gets here before we know it. I mean, I've been working on it, and so has Karl, since the day we left last year. By 30 days, I was already, talking, getting vendors lined up for this year. And last year's vendors actually paid that Saturday. So look, and everybody made money, Matt. Everybody, all of my vendors they made money. They just made so much money. It was crazy. And they come to me and said, can we pay for next year up front? I said, sure. So a lot of them paid their fee for next year, which is $150. If anybody wants to put a table up, it's $150 for a 10 by 10 area.
That's a good size.
Yes, a good size booth.
Yeah.
Good size booth.
Electricity's free. You get a table and 2 chairs, or you can bring whatever you want to put in that 10 by 10. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's worked out pretty good this year. I've been turning away vendors for the last week. I just don't have room for them. So we're excited. It's going to be a blast.
Now, did you guys get any leads from last year's festival?
We did. There was a young lady that I knew her previously, and I knew there was some activity around their property. It goes back many, many decades. And that's one of the stories I was wanting to share with you tonight. She had called me and confided in me something that was going on. And I won't give her name for her own reason, but if you got a minute, I'd be glad to share the story that she shared with me.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it actually started when she was a child. And she lives right on the edge of the Kisatchie National Forest. Their property pretty much backs up to it. And when she was a child, they had a cabin, and her dad would tell her when she rode her bike down that dirt road, don't ride after dark because of the boogers. And she never really thought much about it. And as she got older, and started asking about that, he explained what the boogers were. And he had seen them several times on their property. And their dirt road was probably about a half a mile to a mile long back into the woods. And so anyway, as time went on, several people in that area had encounters, and it wasn't something that people talked about. And I'm sure you're aware of that, Matt. Some people just will not talk about this subject.
Right.
And anyway, I had heard about stuff like that down in that area, and had done a little investigation. Never really got involved too much down there because it was more hush hush. But she called me several months back. Well, I say several months, about 2 months ago, actually. And she said, Karl, I've got something I need to talk about. And I said, okay. She said, I had an incident last night. And I said, well, if you don't mind, share that with me. And she did. And she said that she got out and she started walking her dog. It was about dusk dark. And where their property's at, there's a bridge there, and that bridge is out. So they're road dead ends, and they're right at the end by the bridge. And the cabin I spoke about earlier is probably about 1.5 miles through the woods, which is completely growed over. Her dad has passed and everything. So that's all wooded up. And she had told me that there was a terrible, terrible smell approach. She said the dog noticed it first. You know how a dog will react to something, they just stiffen up. And she said the dog stiffened up, and then she caught the smell. And she looked at the tree line, and she could see a shadow. Really couldn't see more than the shadow. But it scared her enough that she got the dog and her back inside, and her husband wasn't home. The children weren't home. They were there by themselves. And so she, went on the bed. She had a feeling she knew what it was, but didn't think much about it, because she grew up around that.
Yeah.
Anyway, later that afternoon or that night, or it got dark. I don't remember the exact time. I think she said around 11 or so. She heard something hit the side of their cargo trailer that was in their front yard. One of the box cargo trailers slammed a hand against it or something. It made a loud noise. And it frightened her. The dog started barking. They've got several animals in the back, started acting up. And then she heard it come up to the house, and it hit on the side of the house. And she was so scared. She never had any of them violent like that. That she said she actually got up under the bed and called her daughter. And her daughter said, Mama, you need to call the police. And she said, I don't want to talk any longer. I'm afraid it will hear me.
Oh, man.
She was that afraid. The dog, she had the dog under the bed with her. So she'd got the dog quiet. The animals outside was still making a little noise. Well, her daughter called 911 and had the sheriff's department come out there to her property. And when they arrived, everything was calm. It took them probably a good 30 minutes to get there. She's pretty far out. And they looked around, couldn't find nothing like that. So they left, and the rest of the night, her husband showed up a little bit later that afternoon and that night, and it was fine. She called me the next day. So the following day, me and a couple of guys from our group went down there, and we could see where the impressions by the cargo trailer, the grass was tall there, had been mowed yet, where something had pressed down on that. And on the side of the cargo trailer, there wasn't a dent. You know how a flat surface will get like a dust cover over it, from just setting?
Yeah.
Well, you could see which looked like fingernail marks, like it drug its fingernails down the side of the cargo trailer and left the little white lines, digging through the little dirt. And up beside our house, the ground was pressed down there. It was all grassy, so there was no tracks. So that's really verified what she was saying. Something was outside, and she thinks it was one of these creatures, which they grew up calling them boogers down there. And anyway, so me and the guys decided to go out there at night, and we went out there and set up some game cams and stayed out there probably till midnight. We didn't get no activity. Didn't have anything happen. We called it a night. I left the cams out for about a week or two. Nothing popped up. And till recently, which fast forward now, like say 2 months, she had called me and she said, I had the strangest thing happen to me. I said, what was it? And she told me, she said, we went outside and our goats, they have 4 goats and they have some dogs. And this part was really, really strange to her and to me. But somehow the goats ended up inside the dog pen. And the dog pen is like a 10 by 12, 12 by 12 dog kennel. And she said they didn't put them in there.
Huh.
Anyway, she let the goats out and got to looking around and back by their barn, which is probably about 40 or 50 yards behind their house. There were some small tracks. They weren't really defined. We cast what we could. Me and Mark did, and it was you really couldn't make it out. It sort of looked like a small print. It didn't show any claws, but we weren't really sure what it was. Jeff's got an idea. He's thinking maybe bear, and that may be the issue, but none of the animals were disturbed. That was our big issue. They've got, like I say, they've got some goats and they've got a pig and, just general farm animals.
Yeah.
Nothing, and none of them was disturbed, but there were several little small looking tracks, and some of them you can make out the toe prints.
Huh.
So I'm thinking if it was a Bigfoot, maybe it was just some small ones coming there to mess with animals.
Yeah,
I don't know, but nothing else has happened since then. We went down there a couple weeks ago and got those tracks.
Did you happen to check on top of the trailer?
We did not. I never even thought about that, but that would have made a lot of sense. But we did not. It was just a normal 6-foot cargo trailer, but I did not get. I wish I had, now that you mentioned that.
And do you happen to know what her husband does for work?
Well, he is actually self-employed. So he's not home all the time, but he did get in late that night. I'm not sure what he was doing. I know he has his own little business doing something other. And but she was there by herself, and I explained to her, which I think she already knew, is that a lot of times these creatures will come around a house when there's no one home but the female.
Yeah.
But she did see the shadow out by the edge of the woods, and she had seen that before. But as a little girl growing up, and as she become a young woman, she actually had a sighting before, and many people in that community had. But like she told me, everybody's hush hush. They don't want nobody, I think, ridiculing them or a bunch
poking around.
Poking around, exactly, looking around down there. So it's pretty tight-lipped.
Yeah, for people who a lot of people just listen to these podcasts and stuff, and they question some of the reasons. Why on earth would somebody keep their mouth shut? Let me tell you something. My aunt used to have a place up in Missouri, outside of a little town called Weston. And she wasn't necessarily against the idea of Bigfoot existing, but she wasn't fully on board. She would ask me questions about it and stuff. And I've talked to her a little bit about her a little bit over the years. I don't think I've ever just told the full story, but at one point she called me and started asking me a bunch of Bigfoot questions. And I was like, well, yeah, they do this and they do that. Why? What's going on? Well, she thought her property might be haunted. It was a really old farmstead, and she had some weird stuff going on, but everything she was describing to me sounded like Bigfoot stuff. Now, I never went public with her story at that point in time or anything like that. She wasn't in the Bigfoot world at all. She wasn't even on the internet, I don't think. Well, she ended up calling me back a couple months after that to ask me if I knew these two guys that showed up on her property, knocking on the door, wanting access to it because they wanted to do some Bigfoot research on her property. And these two guys, I'm not going to say who they were, but they were active in the Bigfoot community on the internet and everything. They were part of an organization up there, and they had just been in the area scouting for new areas to go and ended up hearing about her property or whatever. And there was, I think, like a neighbor that they were investigating their property or whatever. So whenever people do tell these stories, it's not far-fetched at all for them to be concerned about people coming and poking around, because it happens all the time. My aunt didn't even go public with her story, and it happened to her. And I've heard countless stories, and I'm sure you guys have heard stories too about people showing up wanting to go on somebody's property or something because they heard that they got boogers on their property.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, many times. Many times. You know, something you just said there reminded me of something happened when I was a kid. I hadn't even thought about it in years till you said haunted. And my mom told me this story because I heard her telling my dad. I couldn't have been more than, I don't know, 5 or 6. And I heard it many times as I got older. They'd retell it. My dad built a house we lived in a small community called Florine, Louisiana, which is about 40 miles south of where I'm at now in Natchitoches. And this was late 50s, probably 55, 56, they built that. And my grandmother's house was about a half a mile through the woods, nothing but a trail at that time to my grandma's house. And they would sit on the front porch, as many people did back in those days, in the evening time. And my dad had lumber stacked up where he was building the house. And they would hear popping, slap, slap every once in a while. Well, my grandpa told my dad, said, I think somebody's trying to steal your lumber. We need to go up there. And they went up there, couldn't find nothing wrong. You know, that happened a couple of times. Never did find nothing. Never even thought about any kind of tracks or nothing like that. Didn't see nothing. Anyway, the house got built, and I think this is before I started school, and I was born in 64, so I had to be no more 4 or 5 back then. But anyway, my mom, I remember her telling my dad this story that she said, I think this house we built is haunted. She said, I know, which was my grandpa gave him the land. She said, but I think this house is haunted. He said, why do you say that? She said, because when I'm here with Karl, I hear something running up down the roof of this house. And the house was probably, we were probably 50 yards to the woods in a wooded area, you know, lived way out in the country down a dirt road. And she said, I think it's haunted. Anyway, they never even had an inkling of about a Bigfoot. I remember stories of people saying about an old wild man lived in the woods, which, you know, some people call Bigfoot that. Back then, I thought that they were talking about some homeless man living in the woods. So I'm assuming, and, you know, I may be wrong, but they never seen it. But my mom, to the day she passed, would tell you that story, that something would run up down the roof when Daddy's at work.
Yeah.
And it only do it when she was there by herself.
Huh. Yeah, I think that happens a lot. I think a lot of people just automatically go to one thing that they think, you know, might exist, and that's usually the place is haunted, but the stuff is happening outside instead of inside.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Crazy.
Jeff, I wanted to ask you, do you think sightings and encounters are kind of ramping up? Do you get more reports now than you used to?
You know, we watch the internet and, you know, YouTube and stuff. It seems like that everybody's kind of easing up since it's coming out, and so everybody's kind of wanting to share their story, not for the money deal or the fame, but, you know, you just keep stuff bottled up inside, and you want to tell people, and you just don't want to act stupid or be called an idiot or whatever. But I think it's kind of easing up, Karl. I mean, we hear a lot of stuff that we wouldn't hear, and the internet's just full of it. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it is full of it.
So, yeah, I think it is kind of getting, hey, and look, everybody's got Bigfoot merch. Hobby Lobby, where we live at, has got a ton of Bigfoot stuff. I went in Tractor Supply. They got Bigfoot T-shirts.
Wow.
And that tells you right there that everybody's kind of, you know, getting on the bandwagon, so to speak. That and I know it's money. Bigfoot's money. you know?
Yeah.
But I'd say, yeah, it's kind of easing up. People's kind of saying, okay, I want to tell my story now.
Well, I think you're exactly right. It has become a money thing, you know, from the beef jerky commercials to the all kind of stuff. But back to what you said about encounters, I think, yes, there are more encounters that people are having, only because a lot of people are moving out of the cities into the countryside. And there's down here, it's a big timber industry. I'm sure it is where you're at as well. But we have a big timber industry, you know, and I think it's no different than deer or any other animal. I believe is that you know, when something's being done in their area, they have to move, and then when they move, I think is normally when they get sighted. You know, there was another report we had back in December of last year. I-49 runs through the state of Louisiana from north to south, and Natchitoches is exit 138 for those that are coming to the festival. But anyway, 2 exits up, there was a couple coming, I want to say from Shreveport, and they were taking a cutoff road going to a small community over around Marthaville, Zawali area, somewhere in there. I don't know exactly where they were going, but I know they were going to a wedding. And they took Highway 487. And the ones that are here's this podcast will know where I'm talking about. This was told to me by another gentleman. And they took 487 because it actually cuts off probably 10, 15 miles on the drive they were going to. And it's just a 2-lane blacktop road, and they'd been on the road maybe a mile, and you get into the wooded area, and there's a field cross there, and it goes down into a bottom they call Hall's Break. And these people said they were coming along. It already got dark or get close to dark. They had their headlights on, and this creature ran across the road, jumped the fence down into that bottom they call Hall's Break. And he was telling me about this, and we still haven't found out who the couple is. We're still trying to locate them to hear the actual account from them. But Hall's Break has a lot of activity through the years. I was in line at Walmart of all places. It's about 2 weeks before this incident happened, and anyway, that guy in front of me turned around and said, "Aren't you one of the guys that helped put on that Bigfoot festival?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I was there. It was really good. I appreciate that." He said, "You got a minute?" I said, "Yeah, sure. I'm working the line at Walmart. You know how long that takes."
Yeah.
He proceeded to tell me a story about when he was I think 12 or 14 years old. He was hunting, and he said, "I was hunting in Hall's Break." And he said, "I was down in this creek bottom squirrel hunting." He said, it hadn't rained in a while, so the bottom of the creek was dry. He said, "I was walking through the bottom of that creek because, it's pretty clear down there." And said, "You could see them squirrels jumping in them trees above you." And he said, "I kept hearing this rustling up on the bank." He said, "I didn't think much about it. Probably was a rabbit or something, or, maybe a squirrel on the ground." He kept looking. Anyway, as he walked along, he's like that rustling was just sort of following along with him, but he never could see nothing. Didn't scare him, he said. He said, "Well, I decided to climb up on the bank and just see if I could see it." He was walking, so the rustling was on his right. So he climbed up on the left bank of the creek to look across. So he climbed up on there, he said, and he said, I seen this stump sitting there. He said it was dark, brownish black, just perfectly, just a stump. It looked like a stump. It's probably, he said, 40, 50 feet across there where that stump was. He said he couldn't see nothing on the ground, nothing making that noise. And he said all of a sudden that stump stood up. And he said he don't know how tall it was. He was a 12, 14-year-old boy. If it's him, 6 foot would have been tall. But he said it stood up and it scared him so bad. He said he just took off running. And he said, "I didn't know what it was then." He said, "I know what it was now, or I know what it is now." He said, "I didn't back then." But That was, two incidents about Hall's Break. One more recent, one, this was probably 30 years prior to that. And a couple members of our group were out in that area just doing some research on their own one afternoon. I'll send you these pictures, man. They come across on a logging road a track. The ground was hard, but you can see just like three toes, the ball of the foot and part of the heel. And they didn't have a measuring tape, so they just laid a dollar bill down there, and that thing was probably, I'm guessing, 15, 16 feet long, inches long at least. Where were they at? They were in Hall's Break.
Huh.
So Hall's Break's had a few incidents. I had another story. Another gentleman told me about his nephew that had an incident, seen one of the creatures run on the edge of a hayfield, and he was deer hunting. This is, probably 15 years ago. So, and then within the last 8 months, I've had 3 stories about Hall's Break, and they found a footprint about a month ago. So there's definitely something going on. We're planning to get together and go down there and check things out and see what we can come up with, do a little investigation in Hall's Break.
Yeah, when it cools off, Matt.
Yeah, there's the key right there, when it cools off.
109 here, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, mosquitoes as big as birds around here.
I'm telling you.
I know there's a lot of people that think one of the reasons that these things are so hard to find or get evidence of is because they migrate and they move through areas. That, what you were just talking about, I don't think they do. I think if they don't need to leave an area, they stay put, because you have areas like that seem to have sightings for generations, not just years, but decades in the same general area.
I totally agree with that. I think personally, and as they say, there's no one an expert.
Right.
I think they don't migrate, but I think they travel in circles. I really do. Sort of like a deer does. They'll get a diameter and they just circle around. And that's why sometimes I think you see them or get more reports in the fall than you do in the summer, or just the opposite, or in the spring, just, it depends where they're at. And that's my opinion. They actually travel in a circle. Now, whether that's the fact, I don't know, but I'm like you. I don't believe they migrate either.
Well, you've got so many areas where it's like, yeah, they come through here every X amount of days or X amount of weeks or, whatever. And it's just like you're saying, they're just doing a big loop. There is a place down in Texas where they were basically relocating back and forth for about a 10-mile stretch, just going from one lake north to the other lake and then back south to the other lake. And it was just this cycle that they would just repeat every few months.
Do you think that's they're doing it for like a food source? They, plenish the food one area and then they move to the next? Or
yeah, I do. Years ago, I don't even remember how I stumbled across it, but I stumbled across these maps. I was probably looking for topo maps, but I found these maps that are put out by the something or other department. I'm trying to remember the name of the department, but it's U.S. government, and it's called an ecoregions map. And basically these maps have different layers, and each layer is broken down into more individual layers. So what it's looking at, instead of state borders or anything like that, even topography, it's looking at regions of ecosystems. So you might have like a grasslands area and a bottomlands area. And if you took these maps and laid them over a Bigfoot sighting map, the areas that had the most reported sightings, the biggest clusters, I'll just use southeastern Oklahoma, that whole region right there where you got Oklahoma and Louisiana and Arkansas and Texas all kind of converging. It had the highest density of ecoregions, different ones. And that's also the area that has the most reported sightings of Bigfoot activity in Oklahoma. I mean, it was almost perfect. And so I started thinking about that. And if you look at areas that have these different ecosystems where one area meets another area. So it can be a river bottom, it can be a meadow going into hill country or mountains or whatever. In those areas, you usually have signs of Bigfoot. And those areas also have different food sources, different water sources, different mineral content. And I started thinking about, well, it kind of makes sense if you're a larger creature like that. I would assume you'd need a higher calorie intake. And it makes more sense to travel through an area instead of just like sitting in one spot and just decimating whatever food sources you've got. So you're constantly moving through these different ecoregions. So you're running across different forms of food, different places to get your water and all that. And you're not depleting any of the sources.
Well, if you think about that, that makes total sense with any kind of species. Or you take a cattle farmer that raises cattle. I mean, they'll let them graze on one pasture, and then they'll move them to another because it takes time to regenerate that pasture.
Right.
So you would think animals would be the same way. They're not going to stay and deplete their food source completely, or because if they did that, they wouldn't be able to. But I would think if they are circling, to circle back. So it takes time to repopulate, or you might say, that area.
Well, if you're talking about, whatever it is, let's just use blackberries, for instance. Not all of them all turn ripe at once, You might have some ripe ones, and if you come back and a week later, you'll have more ripe ones to eat. So it might be something much more simple like that. But either way, yes, I think they just kind of circle through these territories for whatever reason. It doesn't make much sense to me to cut across country and go to some area where you have no idea if you're going to be able to find food or water or anything else, and you're exposing yourself to being seen the whole time.
That makes total sense. Sort of like the, I don't know if y'all followed the news about the officer that was put in jail and he escaped and he went into the wilderness.
Yeah. Devil of the Ozarks.
Devil of the Ozarks, exactly. Well, I mean, most criminals or anybody else, if they got transportation, they would hightail out of there. But he knew there was resources in those woods that he could survive on for a while.
Yeah.
So I would think animals are the same way. They, just like you said, why would they migrate across country when they know there's plenty of resources right here, right there?
Yeah.
Even though they're not going to escape nothing, but humans themselves just trying to avoid detection. But it's amazing to me some of the stories you hear about and read about. These animals act a lot like humans do.
Yeah.
A lot of people say they're very intelligent, and I think they are as well. I don't know that for a fact, but to remain this hidden for these hundreds of years, or how many years they've been on this planet amongst us. I had a guy just yesterday, I was putting out one of the flyers for the festival, and he said, "Do you believe in Bigfoot?" I said, "Well, sure, don't you?" And he said, "Well, I never really thought about it." I said, "Well, the way I look at it, thousands of reports are reported every year, and I'm sure there's that many that's not reported. Everybody can't be imagining something or not telling the truth. Somebody's seeing something." So that's how I see it. Somebody's seeing something.
Jeff, you guys got what I consider a pretty broad range of belief systems whenever it comes to your speakers at the festival, which makes total sense. But where do you stand with all this? Do you think these things are just an undiscovered primate species, or do you buy into the stories of mind speak and portals and all that?
I'll let you go first on that, Jeff.
Well, I know Ron Moorhead's going to probably bring that up because he's in that UFO Bigfoot, I think, and the orbs now, thinking that kind of stuff. So I'm open-minded. They've been hidden from us for thousands of years, probably. I don't don't not believe in it, but I don't believe in it. If you know what I mean. I mean, kind of in between. I'm open minded. It could happen. I don't know. I'm not a non-believer, and I'm not a believer.
Have you had any personal experiences where something weird was going on that you just can't explain?
I mean, I've seen the orbs, and in the woods hunting. I'm a big hunter, big fisherman, whatever. And was in law enforcement for 20 years or 30 years, and I was in the military for over 20 years. So yeah, I've seen a lot of crazy stuff that I didn't really ponder on them. It was just, if an orb popped up or a little light or something running around, and you're looking at it like, I didn't think about it. Didn't cross my mind. It could have been an alien in that orb, or whatever.
Right.
So, I don't know. I'd like to comment about the migration thing if I could.
Yeah, of course.
Backtracking, but I think it depends on where they're at. If they're in the mountains, and their primary food is elk and deer, they're going to migrate to the lower areas. And then we're not talking about not a long way, but elk will travel to another state or a pretty good ways away to get away from the weather. So if they're primary, and it would be their primary in the wintertime because no other plants, the berries are not growing, that kind of stuff. Plants are dead, so their meat source is moving.
Yeah.
If they're going to survive, they're going to move with it, either from the Rockies down to down New Mexico, getting lower down and getting to where the elk are at, and then going back up. I really believe that. If they're in Florida and Louisiana, we really don't. I guess the stuff dies here if they're really feeding on herbs or grass or berries and that kind of stuff. But I really think it depends on where they're actually living at.
Yeah.
If they're in the mountains, they're going to have to come down and go with the food. And I think berries are a big part of it, and they're going to go where the berries are growing, if that's what their primary source is, or fish or whatever.
I've heard that from a lot of guys that I'm friends with out in the Pacific Northwest about them going up and down in elevations, kind of migrating through during the year, following the food sources like that. So yeah, I would agree with that totally.
Another thing is, do they store their food? I think they're intelligent. Do they store food? Do they kill enough elk to get them through the winter because it's not going to run? It's frozen. Or would they be like the Native Americans and gatherers, and they'd grab enough food into their shelters to sustain them through the winter months?
I mean, that's something definitely to think about. I haven't really given that much thought over the years, come to think of it, about storing food like that. I've definitely heard weird stories about people finding bone piles and some kinds of dead animals even. I think there was a story about some ducks being stacked up one time, and they're always in neat stacks too, which is kind of strange.
Yeah, kind of like the rocks.
Yeah,
finding rocks in the middle of nowhere stacked on top of each other. If you find an elk or several elk in one area that's been killed, that's pretty rare.
Yeah,
and now a bear's it's not going to drag it. He's going to eat it right there. He may cover it up and come back. And so with the big cats. But what if they do kill an elk and they drag it to a certain location and they just dismember it or whatever and leave everything there and go up to their cave or wherever they're staying and hoard it up? That could be a sign where they're dragging their kill area or their processing station, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an idea. I never heard anybody say anything about. Maybe they store them for the winter months. Maybe they don't want to travel because they're scared to be seen, and they can hoard their food up and get them through the winter. Why not? Hunker down and ride through it.
Have you guys found any of these, what people call glyphs, these little stick patterns on the ground?
I have.
I haven't found any stick patterns. I've come across the broken trees, the twisted, limbs, but never no pattern on the ground that was, to me, was out of ordinary. I've come across what some people call an X in the woods, but you really, I don't know if that means anything, but you just got to be careful there because there is deadfall that will fall weird ways, but when you get 3 or 4 that's crisscrossed and weaving into each other, that's a little different.
Yeah.
Right.
It is something that people bring up from time to time. It's not something that I ever even looked for or, or even thought to look for. I did have a couple friends that found a few weird things, that kind of fit that description over the years. But man, it's just so strange. All of it.
It is. Goes back to what that young lady was telling me about her goats being in the dog pen.
Yeah.
Some people think that may be crazy, but I've heard other stories about how they'll open up a chicken pen and get one chicken out, or they may get one rabbit out and then close the gate and lock it back. And so I mean, this one gentleman told me about, he called him a monkey. He seen the monkey jump over his fence after he got a chicken. So. But, I think that they do some strange stuff. That's why I think they're intelligent to stay elusive as they have all these years. They got to have some kind of thought pattern. It's not like your typical animal that would, come up to a chicken pen and, gnaw through the wire. If they take time to go through the gate, there's some thought, they've seen how you open that gate. You can
Manipulation.
talk to unlock a door or even a monkey. So I think they've observed some things, and that's how they figure out how to do. That's like a gun. I think they don't know what a gun is, but I think they know what it makes noise, and normally what it points at, it falls down once he hears the noise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I got a question. Kind of goes with what we're talking about. Gifting. What do y'all think about that? When you put out something and get something in return at a gifting spot.
No, Jeff, you're not supposed to ask me questions.
Well, I think.
Okay, you can ask that question, Matt. Go ahead.
Yeah, gifting.
Yeah. Well, check this out. I got a cat. It's a cat that wandered up to the house and it never left. And anyway, talking about gifting, and this cat brought a dead squirrel up on my porch and left it. And how do I know the cat did that? Because my dog's inside, and when I come outside and found, the cat stays outside. When I come outside and found the squirrel, the cat was sitting by the squirrel like, "Hey, this is what I brought you."
Yeah.
I guess I don't know if he was saying,
That's wild.
Thank you for getting me out of the, surviving, feed me and stuff. I don't know, but I've never done gifting with these creatures at all, and I ain't saying I won't, but I've never had the opportunity to do that. But I've heard a lot of people talk about doing it, yes, and have done it, and they say it works.
I have heard a lot of stories, and I have heard a handful of stories about gifting where I'm on board with the idea that Bigfoot is the one that was doing it. Because to me, you got to get to that point first. You can't just leave a jar of peanut butter out in the woods and then come back a month later and the jar is gone and say Bigfoot did it. A lot of people do.
Right.
A lot of people do.
Right.
But there are some situations where it definitely seems like to me that it was Bigfoot leaving the item or taking the item. Now, as far as gifting is concerned, the actual idea of it being a gift, I think that's something that we put on it. I don't necessarily believe that Bigfoot sees it as a gift of some kind or anything like that. It's just how we're interpreting it with our human brains, trying to explain what's going on. I don't think it's necessarily any different than them coming into camp while you're asleep and taking a loaf of bread or something. I think, especially with food items, but you know, I've heard it with other items too. I had one guy on the podcast that I don't have any explanation for this one. He said that he took pictures of things like images of Bigfoot, if I remember correctly, like photographs, not of Bigfoot, but of like drawings and stuff that look like Bigfoot, and put them in a certain order. There was multiple photos, and then buried those in the ground very shallow at this spot where he's done gifting over the years. And that he would come back and uncover the photos, and they would all be there, but they'd be in a different order.
Strange.
Yeah, strange.
You would think either somebody saw him do it or something's going on, or some people would think, you know, you're dealing with the paranormal then as well. There's so many, you know, I guess that would sort of tie back into your question earlier, what we think these creatures are. I mean, till someone brings in a body, we're never really going to know. But I think they're flesh and blood. I really do. I think they're just a flesh and blood animal that needs to survive, and it's just finding a way to do that and stay elusive. You know, just like where I live, there's bear out here, and I've seen one bear in the last 25 years that I've lived here. But there's people find bear tracks out in this area in these woods all the time, but they don't ever see the bear.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, you know, there's fewer bear. Maybe I don't know, but I think I think they're flesh and blood. But yeah, we're looking forward to the festival, man. We are. You guys, you know, you guys want to come out? It's September the 6th at the Natchitoches Event Center. The doors open at 9 a.m. We're open all day till 6. Great speakers, over 60 vendors, lots of Bigfoot stuff, and we do got a really surprise we can't really talk about yet about and we just say a Bigfoot's going to be there. Let's put it like that.
Oh, so all right.
Yeah, a big one.
So
Bigfoot.
We really can't give out a lot of details, so that's going to be a big surprise when you walk through the door. So
awesome.
We're looking forward to that, and one of our local vendors is putting that together, and they have a big production deal down here. I'll give them a plug. It's called Dark Woods, and they have their Halloween thing starts on Halloween, and it's just amazing. It's if you like you said, you're walking through the woods, and it's a Halloween treat. So if you're down in this area, in that area, and you want to check them out, come on down, because it's exciting. But yeah, we're excited. We'd love to get you down here, Matt. So that's an open invitation if you're ready.
Yeah, someday, hopefully it will happen. Is there a place where people can buy tickets online or get information online?
It is. I'll let Jeff describe that. He's been handling that more than me. Jeff, are you still on the line with us?
Yeah, go to Natchitoches Louisiana Bigfoot Festival on Facebook, and there's a page there where you can buy entry fee money. You can pay to get in. You can buy T-shirts, posters. All our merch is on there, but you have to buy a entry ticket to get pushed on to the merchandise. So you just can't go buy merchandise. You got to go buy a ticket to get in, and then it'll go to the merchandise section. So you can do a package deal, and that's what we're pushing. We got a hotel right across from the event center that is giving a little better deal. It's got that French name, Karl, what's it called? Châtelet or something like that.
Yeah.
Saint Denis. But anyway, if you can go check the internet, you go to the internet, it'll tell you about that also. If you got any questions, they can call me at 318-554-8992. If you got any questions. Come on, people, we're ready. We want 3,000 people to show up.
Well, fellas, I appreciate you coming on here and sharing a few stories and talking about the event. Sounds like it's going to be another good one.
Yeah, man, we appreciate you for allowing us to come on this year and last year.
Oh, of course.
Appreciate you.
Absolutely. A lot of people said they heard our radio, our podcast last year we met, and they were excited about it. And a lot of them were excited to hear that we were going to be back on here again this year. So we're just excited that you would think well enough of us to have us back and help us promote this event. So thank you very much.
Oh, of course.
Appreciate you.
If you go to the festival, be sure to tell them Bigfoot Crossroads sent you. And if you've had your own encounter with Bigfoot or something else you can't explain, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find links to social media, merchandise, past episodes, everything you need all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.